of different ways of doing things, using ladders, using hoses, streams, you know, all of that, learning about structures and everything, all accumulates into putting the fire out, which is what this entire chapter is. If you had the opportunity to read the chapter, 54 pages, and there was a lot of information in 54 pages. So this is going to be a fairly long lecture. I would guess it's probably going to take all of the 2 of the 3 hours minimum to get through all this stuff. So like normal, we'll take our breaks as we need to, because I'll get tired of talking and your asses will get tired of sitting. So objective 1, we're going to describe the initial factors to consider when suppressing structure fires. Basically, what we need to worry about before we even go inside a structure. So I've talked about it a few times. Basically, number 1 is life safety. Whose life are we worried about the most to begin with? Our own. We are number 1. We worry about me, you worry about you, and if I'm worried about me and you're worried about you, we're worried about we. After that, whose life are we worried about?
Victim.
Any salvageable victims inside, okay? If we're in a situation where that fire is just roaring, and we know somebody's inside in the room that's just, windows are blown out, fire's just rolling out that window, is it a salvageable victim more than likely? No. Are we gonna risk our life to go in and try and save somebody that's not salvageable? No. Is that your decision to make? No, that's IC's decision to make, okay? Incident stabilization, you know, is it in a situation where that building is safe? Or can we do something to ensure a safe building before we make entry? Can we help vent it to make it safer for us? And then property conservation, making sure that, you know, we can save as much of that homeowner's property as possible. And that can be anything from, you know, rooms that aren't affected by the fire necessarily, but during overhaul or when the fire's really been knocked down, of getting picture frames, albums, computers, stuff like that out of the house so that it doesn't get ruined with the smoke and whatever water's left and everything else. So, you know, obviously getting the bigger stuff out, you know, baby grand pianos is a little difficult, but, you know, the memorial stuff, those pictures, those things that they can never get back, those memories and photos, you know, those, believe it or not, if you pull photographs out of the house, they're so happy to have that. So we have 2 different types of fighting fires. Obviously, one is an offensive, so offensive suppression. It's going to entail interior attacks. You know, and factors that we need to use and determine is we need to determine if there's value. Is there a life or is there any safety hazards at the scene or any salvageable lives in there? You know, or salvageable properties, things of that real importance that we should try and get out. You know, if there is, then we need to make that decision and try and get that taken care of. If there's not, then is the offensive direction the way we need to go with it? You know, we get into this mindset that we're firefighters, and you know, I'll tell you, you get that opportunity to go in, and you're jonesing. You know, well, I get to go in. Well, yeah, but do we need to? You know, yeah, this is what we do, and this is what we want to do, and where we want to be, but do we need to go in? You know, time. You know, do we have time to accomplish what we need to do? You know, depending on the size of the structure, depending on potential for collapse or deterioration of the structure stability itself. Do we have the ability to get the stuff done that we need to do in the amount of time and do it safely? You know, or you know, are we going to deal with potential fire changes that we need to be made aware of or pay attention to? And size, you know, the tactical flow rate, you know, are we going to have enough water to do what we need to do safely? You know, you pull up on a scene and you're pulling up in a pickup. Believe it or not, it happens. Okay, Detroit Fire was in such a such a crisis for money that they couldn't afford things. And have you guys ever seen the video that they made, the movie that was made for Detroit Fire? I will find out what it is. It is a really good, basically it was Detroit Fire went through this huge, they're going through with the collapse of the economy and everything else, that houses are just empty. Okay. And, yeah, burned. And people are burning houses left and right. They got 15, 20 structure fires a night. You know, these guys are going in every time. Well, they're having such a money crisis that they have equipment problems that they literally pulled up to a scene with salvageable life inside in a pickup that could not flow water. You know, a little drastic, I understand, but in smaller departments, do you have the ability with a truck that's your first out truck to put out a major fire right away? You know, and that's the situations you have to think about, is do you have the resources available to do what you need to do right away, or do you need to make a decision to wait until you have the resources available? You know, obviously our objective always is gonna be to rescue any salvageable life and put out any fires that we can. That's the main objective, especially in offensive strategy. You know, in some instances, rescue and extinguishment can happen at the same time. You know, it's all about timing, so we have to do it that way, but, you know, it's gotta be a coordinated event, and people have to be talking to each other through the whole thing. Other way we can fight a fire is defensively. We make that decision, we're gonna go defensive, you know, and reasons why are, you know, there's no threat to occupant life inside. You know, no life inside exists, so do we need to go in at this point in time? Or like I've said already, there is life inside, but it's not salvageable. The property's not salvageable. It's a rundown house, it's a house that's been red tagged, nobody lives in it. You know, do we need to risk our lives to go in to save something that's, you know, gonna be bulldozed anyway? I just said it a little bit ago about resources. You don't have the resources available at the time. You know, Armstrong shows up, 3 guys show up at the station, that's all that's in town right now. 3 guys get in the truck and they take off and they get to the structure and it's just the 3 of them. Do they have the resources to make an interior offensive attack? Or should they wait? Probably should wait. You know? Is that structure gonna stand up? Or is its stability in jeopardy? Is it gonna fall? Is it gonna collapse? You know, what factors do we see when we make that initial 360 that tell us that this structure is not stable and it has a potential for collapse? And obviously if it's any in danger to us, anything at all, we see anything that's a danger to our lives, you know, it's no joy. You know, if I see a threat to my life before I go in, I have that total right to speak up and say, I don't feel safe to do this. And you should have a chief that is understandable to that, and that comes with experience, obviously. You know, it's, you know, what I would hope would be a little different from me saying I don't feel comfortable than it is for, you know, Jed, who's, you know, year 1, to say he's not feeling comfortable. He may not feel comfortable because he's never experienced it before. I may not feel comfortable because I have experienced it enough times, and what I see bothers me more than what normal, you know. I'm not gonna tell you that I can show up at a fire scene, go ready to make entry, and my heart's beating 60 times a minute, and I'm like, all right, here we go, let's do this. You know, no, I'm amped up just like everybody else is. It's a little more control, but, you know, I'm amped up as well, so. Defensive suppression strategies work to isolate or stabilize the incident. Excessive volume of fires going on at this point in time. You know, the fire exceeds the ability for us to, and the resources we have to extinguish it, or we have lack of resources. Not enough people, not enough trained people. You know? we can't flow enough water, we don't have sufficient hydrants, we haven't got porta tanks set up to allow enough water to flow. We don't have the right equipment there, we don't have the right apparatuses there. You know, maybe you show up with, a pumper and an equipment truck right away, you know, and maybe you need more water, so you're waiting for a tanker to get there. You know, the building itself is deteriorated. Risk benefits. Risk a little to save a lot, and risk a lot to save a little. You know? And something we don't think about a lot, but, you know, unfavorable wind conditions. You know, is the wind gonna prohibit safe entry when we start making entry into the building? Do we have the ability to enter into a building, you know, in an area where the wind is helping us and not hindering us? You know, are we gonna open up a door, open up an entry point that's helping drive the wind? Making a transition, going from defensive to offensive or vice versa, offensive to defensive. Defensive to offensive is probably the easiest transition we can make. We show up, we're outside, we're taking our time, we're setting up hose lines, we're spraying water from the outside, we get enough apparatus, we get enough equipment, we get enough people. And the decision's made by IC, let's go ahead and go in and get this. Team's already set up, the hose is already there. Entry's been made, you go in, you find it, you put it out. Going from offensive to defensive, there's a lot of things we need to worry about and a lot of things we gotta follow. You know, it can be a quick change, and in most cases it probably is a quick change. You know, something has deteriorated, the chief sees something or IC sees something that says to us, we can't do this from the inside, it's not safe anymore. You know? So, big thing is the speed at which it's gonna happen, but you also gotta have what we're gonna call a personal accountability report, or a PAR. So everybody, when you show up on scene, we talked about this in a number of lectures ago, I talked about having personal accountability. When we show up, we have 3 tags, right? Everybody remember that? Tag 1 goes to the truck, I was on this truck. Tag 2 goes to accountability individual, whoever that happens to be. And tag 3 goes to interior, if that's what we're doing at that point in time. Or if you're up on the aerial, you know, that aerial person may have a tag that he wants to know who's up there or whatnot. So that when everybody comes out, we're able to account for everybody. So, when we transition from an offense to a defense, situational awareness, what's going on all around us, and everybody needs to recognize any changes in the fire behavior and any structural stability going on. You know, did we open a window, did we open a door and change things on the inside, and now we have excessive fire coming out of somewhere that we didn't have before? Or does that interior crew, as they're crawling along, all of a sudden feel like the floor is getting worse? Is it just extremely hot in an area that it wasn't before? What's your evacuation signal? We discussed this once before. Arnold Spark, what's ours?
3 quick horn blasts.
Air horn blasts. Hartley, same. Armstrong, same. Terrell?
Tim just shouts at us.
Tim just yells. It should be the same. Everybody's, it's more than often it is 3 quick air horn blasts. Monitor our radios. Everybody should have a radio or be next to somebody who has a radio so that we can make communications. Remain calm and follow orders. That's the big thing. Remain calm. Stay with your team. 2 in, 2 out, 3 in, 3 out. We're all together. Hose line, you came in with it, so it came from the door, so we can use it to get back out. Don't leave it unless we absolutely have to, because that's our protector, right? That can help us. If we get into a situation when we're trying to get out, and it's hot, and we need protection, that's our lifeline. It helps us get out, but we can turn that thing to big old fog pattern and help protect us, right? Quick and as easy as possible. Do that par when everybody gets out. And your department should have some type of SOP as how to change from an offensive to a defense. Coordination, victim recovery, forcible entry, all of these things can be done individually, can be done in efforts with each other. You know, you can easily ventilate while you're doing a victim recovery, you know, or you can set up ventilation and you can set up, you know, search and rescue operations while forcible entry is being made. In any instance, whether you're going offensive to defensive or defensive and offensive, situational awareness is huge. It protects you, it's gonna protect your team. It's not just, and I've said it before, you know, what's the guy on the nozzle, the guy that gets to spray the water, you know, what's his job? Put the
Red stuff on the red
on
stuff.
the red stuff. What's number 2's job? Help push hose, help hold hose, but what's his other main job?
Head on a swivel.
Head on a swivel. So, more experienced person on the fire and on a hose should be 1 or 2. Number 2. He knows what he's looking for. She knows what she's looking for. Head's always on a swivel. Up, down, left, right. Always looking, always looking. Number 1, he's almost focused. Should be looking around, but his focus is red stuff. I hear it, I see it, red stuff. Number 2, he's constantly looking, you know. So, constantly looking, constantly listening. You know, are we hearing something that we normally don't hear? Are you hearing floor pops? Are you hearing creaks and cracks that we shouldn't be normally hearing? And everybody communicate. Communicate with your supervisor, supervisor communicates to IC, let everybody know what's going on in the whole realm of what we're dealing with. So we gotta pick a hose line. Minimum hose line is going to be for an interior tack is
1.5 inches.
1.5 inches. So what makes us determine what size of hose we can take? Because we can take 1.5 inches up to what for interior fire tank?
2.5.
2.5. There's 3-inch out there now. You know, you could take a 3-inch in if you wanted to. I mean, it's if you got the manpower. You know, I actually just saw something today that not Kelly Fire, maybe it is Kelly Fire. There is a fire company out there now that is producing 2.25 fire tack hose. So, you know, but so what can make us decide between, we'll say 1.75 inches and 2.5? What makes us decide between 1.75 inches and 2.5?
Size of the building.
Size of the building,
Compartment size, yeah. Fire size.
fire size, fire size or fire load, you know, what's in the building.
Amount of hose you have in that size.
Yeah. Yeah, cause that could be a factor for some people, you know. Flow rate, can we push enough water 1.75 inches to put it out, or are we gonna need to push a little bit more water? Is the stream gonna reach it? 2.5's got a little bit further reach than 1.75 inches does, cause it's gonna have more push to it. Number of firefighters gonna matter?
Mm-hmm.
2 firefighters on 2.5 is no fun. How fast, the speed or the mobility of the situation. You're gonna deploy 1.75 inches a lot faster than you're gonna deploy 2.5. Ease of deployment, how fast can we get it off the truck? You know, we've got, I think everybody's probably got 1.75 inches, 1.5 on a Speedway, but we've got 2.5 on Speedway as well. The difference is that a lot of that Speedway on 2.5 is you pull it, but you gotta disconnect it to hook it to the truck, cause you may not need 300 feet of 2.5 for an interior tack, so. And there it is, 1.5 no smaller than, or hose line no smaller than 1.5 is gonna be used on an interior fire attack. Nozzle selection, so we probably all, everybody, what nozzles did you guys play with out there?
Everything.
All of them.
Played with them all? So you got to play with automatics, you
Smooth
got to
bo-
play with smooth bores,
Smooth bores.
you know, you got to play with all of them. So,
Ground monitor.
you got to play with the ground monitor,
With smooth bore and
with smooth bore and the fog pattern, the fog nozzle.
fog nozzle.
Okay. So, what do we need to consider on an interior fire attack? Which nozzle we're probably gonna use on the interior? We're going in, what nozzle we probably
Fog
gonna use?
nozzle.
Fog nozzle. Okay. Fire condition's gonna play a big consideration into it. You know, your variable water supply, your fog nozzles don't use as much water, obviously, as your smooth bores do. You know. Why on the interior are we using fog patterns? Fog nozzles.
Cause it gives you that flexibility, right? You can do straight stream or
Straight stream, yep, you
Or
can get it down to a
just
straight
fog-
stream, or
fog
you can do
pattern.
it to a fog pattern, you know. When you guys played with them on Saturday, did Chris use the analogy, right to fight, left for life? Did he use that with you guys? That is your analysis, so, when you've got it in your hand, okay, once you open it up, you should have, your optimal pattern should be about 30 degrees. That gives you enough reach to do what you want, gives you nice big droplets to get a good pattern out. But, if you've got that in your hand, if you wanna go to a straight stream, you go right to fight, okay? If you're in a situation where you need protection, you want a huge fog pattern to keep the heat away or whatever, you roll it left for life, okay? Right to fight, left for life. Size, or what nozzle pattern or nozzle are we gonna use on the outside then? If we're using a fog nozzle on the inside, what do we use on the outside? Smooth bore, solid stream. Why? What does a solid stream give us that a fog doesn't? Range. More water out there further. So we don't have to be as close to put a lot of water in a area in a short period of time. Alright, considerations when making entry. Who ultimately makes the decision we're going in? I see or the supervisor. They've done their 360, they've done their walk around. They're gonna make that decision, yep. It's good, we can go in. Everything should be in place first before we make entry. Hose lines should be deployed in places where we need, not only the primary crew, but a secondary hose line should be set up with the crew ready. Should know how many occupants, if we've got any inside, where they're at, if we can find, if we know, great, if we don't, then have an idea. Know something about the property, what the property is used for, is it a residential, single dwelling, multi-dwelling, you know, the more information we have to us before we start, the better off we're going to be, obviously. And other factors we need to know. You know, wind direction and velocity, they're gonna play a huge part when we start ventilating. we're ventilating, you know, and we got a north wind and we gotta make entry through the north side of the building, maybe we need to possibly look at making entry through the west or the east side, just to avoid that wind blowing in. Conditions of the building, we talked about it multiple times already, is it a structure that's stable? The initial fire location, upstairs, downstairs, main level, A corner, B corner, C side, D side. Exposures. And what kind of exposures do we have? Do we have just garage next door? Do we have houses close by? You know, all those factors are gonna go in when we decide if we're gonna make entry or not. Every single one of us needs to do a quick size up. Read that fire. High situational awareness. Everything's going on. High stress area, high stress job, for sure. But we need to be on have our wits about us. Understand the crew you have with you. Are they gonna be capable to do the things that we need to do, or do we need to make sure we have people available to do that, or the right people? I've been on the department I was on before this one, we had a member on it that was all gung ho, but he'd suck a bottle down in 15 minutes. Was he gonna be the right guy to go do search and rescue? You know? You get you 15 minutes to do search and rescue, and I can hold a bottle for 30 minutes. So he cuts my time down in half just because he sucks wind, Patrick. I mean, I did a minute and a half. Probably should know where our emergency escape routes are at. Other doors, windows that we have available to us. Do we have the right equipment to do forcible entry? Pike poles, tools, stuff like that we're gonna need. Everybody's got the radios are working. SCBA is on. Cylinder is full. If not full, everybody's cylinder should be within probably 2 PSI of each other. If you're 5 to 10 PSI different from your partner, then, you know, you're limited on who's the lowest one is. Pass devices should be working. Always have that second team ready to go as well, in case something goes bad, or a RIT team available. Do a buddy check. You know, we did it that first night that I worked with you guys about donning and doffing gear. You know, I had you guys check each other, right? Same thing, when we get ready to go into a structure, check each other. You know? I got out of the truck one time to do a car fire, started walking up to the car fire, was all ready to go. The guy on the nozzle turned around, looked at me and says, "Dude, you gonna put your helmet on?" Oh, shit. Back to the truck I went to grab my helmet, so. I was young, so.
Done it too.
Wasn't in a big hurry, I just did everything else and set my helmet down and put my hood on, put my pack on, turn my pack on and put my gloves on, time to go to work. I just forgot to grab my helmet and put it back on, so it happens. Understand what you may need to fulfill your role during entry. Things you might need. Open interior doors, close them when we're done. Check those concealed spaces for extension, so we don't have smoke explosion. Make an emergency exit if you need to, breach a wall. But the interior fire crew needs to have the tools and equipment to do all of this. What equipment should the interior crew have with them when they go inside? Radio. Light box. The book says pike pole. Ever found with carrying a pike pole?
you know, what's the shortest pipe pole you guys got on your truck?
6.
6? You ever try to carry a 6-foot pipe pole and crawl and not poke the guy in front of you or behind you? I am a huge fan of a Clemens hook, a D-handled Clemens hook. It is 3 foot long, it's got a Clemens bill on the front of it, it looks like a pike pole, except it's kind of got a bill on it. So when you punch a ceiling, you punch it, rotate it, and pull, it grabs a lot more. It works a lot, I prefer it. I don't like pipe poles, I don't like anything with a pole, I prefer D-handles on everything. I just think you have better control of it, so, you know. What else?
Halligan,
Halligan or a married pair. What is a married pair? Halligan and a,
axe.
which type? Which type of axe?
Flat.
Flathead. Yep. Because you may need it to strike with. Okay. And then, if available, and I understand that some departments have the abilities and some don't, but some type of thermal imaging, if you can carry it with you. You know, it's becoming more prevalent that thermal imaging goes in on the initial attack to help. You know, and we've discussed it before, you know, Scott's putting them in the mask, in their new mask, their new pack, it's in the mask, you know, it's a visual icon, it's a visual piece right up, just above the right eye, that you can look up at any point in time, and you have a tick in front of you. MSA, the new G1s, have it in the pass device, that you just pick it up and your thermal imaging is right here, just like it normally would be. And it's as good as some of the bigger handheld ones are. You can put it down and crawl some more, and, you know, I've had the experience to play with both. I've worked with the Scott and I've worked with the MSA, and, you know, it's whatever you want, you know? But if you don't have that, and you've got one mounted in a charging station in the truck, grab it and use it. It's a tool. Open that nozzle pattern before we even make entry. It does a few things. First of all, it checks your pattern, and it's gonna bleed the air from the hose line. Do not open the door until you have charged the hose line. For obvious reasons. You swing a door open and it comes roaring out at you and you haven't charged that hose line, it takes time. Now we're gonna go in. Okay? Wait in a safe area near the building before we start. Usually somewhere 4 to 5 feet in front of the door. Far enough away from the door that if something was to happen right by the door, you wouldn't get injured, but close enough that if something did, you could react quickly. From that area, if you have the ability, if a window has been blown out and fire's coming out of it, take the time and extinguish some visible fires outside first. Don't ever go past a fire without putting it out. Cause what happens? You go past it cause you think it's just a small fire, and you go past it going for the bigger one, what happened to that small one behind you? 'Cause remember, you opened up the door, so it gets bigger. Make your move to the door. If you're doing ventilation, stay out of the doorway. If forced entry has to be made, stay out of that guy's way, or that crew's way. Sometimes it takes more than one to do the forced entry. We're gonna check that door before we make entry, right? How are we gonna check it?
Back of a gloved hand, water.
Water. That's the one I forget about, you know, because we don't usually do it a lot. But if you've got a metal door in front of you, just spray a little water on it. If it's hot, what's the water gonna do? Evaporate. If it's not hot, water's just gonna run down it. So, you know.
so when we're ventilating, we're gonna crack that door open. So we've now given a release, so we're venting. What happens to all the heat? It's gonna go out, up and out. So we're gonna have a quick release of heat through that ventilation pattern, pretty substantial at times, depending on, obviously, wind direction and everything else. So we got smoke rolling out of that, top of that door. What is smoke? Smoke is unburned fuel. Watch that smoke as it's coming out. Notice its color, notice what it's doing. You know, is it just kind of seeping out? Is it flowing out? Is it, you know, what is it doing? What color is it? Remember too, as that smoke is rolling out the top, what's rolling in underneath?
For sure.
Fresh air. Okay? Maintain control of that door. If you need to, you've learned how to tie knots. Tie a knot, pop that door open. We don't want that door to close behind us. Kinks the hose, stuff like that. So, traditionally, in the old days, how did we attack fire? From which side? The green or the black?
From the green.
Traditionally, we used to fight it from the green. But studies are starting to be done. NIST and I want to say UEFA, but that's
UL.
UL. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, UEFA, European Soccer League. That they're doing studies on fire now. You know, they're starting to see that maybe we need to do this different. Due to the fact that we have greater heat release because of the building materials that we're using. Because in 1920, when our house was built, what did we use? A lot of wood, a lot of natural wood, and now we're using a lot of what? Pressed wood items, glues, plastics. And because of that, Mother Nature and her wind increases the speed and the heat that's coming out of it, making them unpredictable. So we're not necessarily saying that fighting from the green is a bad thing, but pay attention to all the other factors. More or less or not, wind at your back is vitally important. That'll help push it away from you. Wind's gonna create an airflow pattern in that structure. Greatly increases your fire expansion, and it is a huge cause of firefighter casualties, line of duty deaths. I talked to you guys about the fire that I came out of, that we got pulled out of, that the fire was rolling out the top of the doorway above my head, because we made entry into the front door. But the wind was being pushed from the lake side, so it was basically, we were going in, so the wind was in our face instead of behind us. Let's talk about direct attack, indirect attack, combinations, and gas cooling techniques. So direct attack is what? Anybody?
Putting water on the fire.
Put water on the fire. You see it, you hit it. Wow, excuse me. Usually direct attack, what kind of pattern or solid stream nozzles are we gonna use? More often than not, we're gonna use a solid or a straight stream. more efficient. And like you said, water's applied directly onto the burning fuel. Another effective way we can do it that we call direct attack, is basically we bounce it. We can see it, or we can see the heavy smoke, but we may not be able to directly hit it because of window heights or whatever. So just bounce it. Hit the ceiling and let it rain. Rain from the ceiling, run down the walls. It's gonna slow or stop paralysis. You put enough water, put enough water on it, but be careful not to upset what we're gonna call the thermal layering or thermal balance. And basically, that is when we take the smoke and the heat and they drop rapidly to the floor. So that, that's what we were talking about earlier in that question, wasn't it, Mike? That you just put enough water and steam up there that it changes the thermal balance. And the test question was stated that when doing that, with the expansion of steam, it causes the gas and the fuels to do what? To contract.
Contract.
Okay. So, books literature on it, water should not be applied long enough to upset the thermal layering in the compartment. The steam produced will begin to condense, causing the smoke and heat to drop rapidly to the floor and move sluggishly thereafter. So that tells me that it was the A, it pushed it down,
Yeah, it's confusing.
so.
What's your experience idea though? If you put too much water in the ceiling, you're in the trailer.
I'm trying to think if I've actually had to do that. I've seen it.
What about in the trailer, or in the flight when you do?
Oh,
The
if
trailers.
I get it hot in there, if I get it hot enough in that trailer and you guys come in and put enough water on it, it'll pound me. Cause I'm in a back corner. So you guys are kinda pushing into it, so all that heat, because of the way one of the burners works, the rollover burner, so it's constantly pushing, and you guys put water on something, it'll take it and it'll roll it back, but when it gets to that back wall, it's only got one place to go, and it'll drop it on me. But we don't get it extremely hot in there, because the trailer's not meant to see how much we can kick your butt. It's meant for learning and
Mhm.
doing it that way, so. Maybe once or twice I've dealt with it, and that's only because it was just a new enough individual on the nozzle that they weren't ready. And it just took them a while to get to that point of actually spraying water. So, other than that, most of the time it's, if I'm too hot in there, it's because I fired the burners too early and the crew was slow to get down, so I just kinda, try to cook myself out of there. But,
My experience in the back of the Zippers building was hitting a fire that was rolling over with a 2.5 inch in it, and it just turned everything to steam almost instantly, just everything gone, you couldn't see anything,
yeah,
it was out,
yeah.
but you couldn't see anything,
Yeah.
and it was hot.
But with the 2.5, because you had so much water and the droplets were big, that it took so much energy out of the fire to convert it, that that's what happened with it,
Mhm.
so,
Is that at that back door?
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, cause our entry in the front door was open the door and went, no, we're not going. That was the beginning, so. And actually, this is what they're showing is a prop. It's a standing prop, so, but. And they're doing a direct attack right on it, bouncing it off the wall. So indirect attack used when it's just so hot in there.
that we just can't get in yet. So you stand from the outside of the structure in an involved area, through a window, a door, and you direct it towards the ceiling, cool the entire room. This is what we talked about, and some of you guys weren't here yet. Mike and I and the Armstrong guys and Pat, we were talking about, so when you get into a room, get into a structure, and it is just, the heat is so intense that you can't take it, it's just too hot. Or you wanna know how hot it is in there, and it talks about it here, and actually it's a couple slides, so we'll get to it, so we'll come to that, cause it's the gas cooling stuff, so. So indirect attack is exactly what it says. Just indirectly, we're just gonna try and cool the atmosphere from the outside. We can't see the fire, we know it's in there, we're just trying to cool an atmosphere. So the combination attack takes both direct and indirect. And it can be more than one team, but what it's talking about is a combination is, you see the burning item at the base, you know, in the simulator, but it shows you the circle pattern, right? Or the T pattern, the inverted T pattern, or the Z pattern. Basically what we're doing is that at the same time, we're hitting the fire, we're cooling the atmosphere. Okay? And you'll hear us in the trailer telling you to do this, because these are propane fired burners is what we're using, so we can fire them up and you're not gonna put them out. You can deluge them with water all you want, it's just gonna keep firing. Okay, you're not gonna put it out. So the idea is we will constantly, you know, use your Z pattern, use your inverted T, so you're gonna cool the atmosphere, hit the fire. Cool the atmosphere, hit the fire. Cool the atmosphere, hit the fire. That's your combination attack, okay? Direct attack is, you see it, you hit it. Indirect is, you're on the outside, you can't see it, you're cooling the atmosphere, you're just spraying water to the ceiling to cool the atmosphere. And the combination is circle pattern, Z pattern, or your inverted T, okay? So gas cooling. Remember, we talked about gas layering. Hotter at the top, works its way down, cooler towards the bottom. We start seeing remnants of what we believe could possibly happen to have what we would know as flashover, so we start seeing those little trickles of fire running through the smoke. So we know what's happening at that top gas layer. It is getting to the point of ignition. So we need to cool that gas layer, right? Okay? If we don't have that point of ignition yet, but we wanna know how hot it is up there, how do we check that? No, we don't get to stand up. Okay? It's hot up here. It's hot. How am I gonna check that gas layer to see how hot I think it is up there?
Spray some water up there.
What's that?
Spray some water.
Spray some water up there. Okay, depending on the size of the room, depending on other factors, depends on how long they happen, but it's about 3 bursts. Okay? So you just, from your position, nozzle points up, open, close, open, close, open, close. If I get rained on, water droplets falling on me, what do I know about the atmosphere?
Cool.
It's cool. If I do that and I get hammered by steam, what do I know about the atmosphere? It's hot, right? Okay? So if it's hot for steam, and I'm in the doorway, or just inside the doorway, what are my options?
Try
I
to
can either A, keep going, I know it's hot, I can go ahead and keep going if I wanted,
keep cooling.
or keep cooling, back out, because we know if we put water in the atmosphere, what's gonna happen? It's gonna convert it and it's gonna slam down on top of us, okay? We back out of the compartment, put it up in the air, and try and cool
cool it down. Do it in bursts. Because I just told you earlier, if I just deluge it, if I just point it up there and I crack that bad boy open and I hold it up there, what's gonna happen? It's gonna change it, right? And it's just gonna continue to drop steam, okay? It's gonna take all that and it's just gonna start pushing it down. We just wanna cool the atmosphere, just short bursts, okay? Another way that we used to learn to do it was, instead of doing a short burst, is just hit it, draw a Z pattern, and shut it down. Same idea, it's just a little bit longer water spray. You know, like I said, depending on the size of the compartment, depends on how long those bursts are. Okay? We've been doing this for an hour. Let's go ahead and take a break. Let's just do about 5 minutes.